If there is one positive thing that we could extract from the first race of the 2023 season, that has to be the pace of the AMR 23. Both Alonso and Stroll were flying on the track, and while the Formula One fans are happy to see another team mixed in the top three of the grid, Red Bull, for one, won't be very happy to see the results that Aston Martin has set up. What seems to be a huge issue for them is accepting the fact that most of their staff is now working for Aston Martin, and the Milton Keynes team is ready to take things to court when it comes to the legality of the design of the AMR 23. Red Bull started the season exactly how they ended it, with a dominant drive by Verstappen and no one actually presenting a challenge to the two-time world champion. What seemed like a better sight for them was the upgrade by Perez, with the Mexican qualifying P2 and ending the race there after being passed by Leclerc at the beginning of the race. However, Perez didn't let anything get to his head as he hunted down the Ferrari driver, and due to a different tyre strategy and old reliability issues for Ferrari, he was able to prevail in the battle for second place. However, the biggest surprise when it comes to completing the last place on the podium was Fernando Alonso. And while everyone, including Perez and Verstappen, were very happy to see a shift in the dynamics, it goes without saying that the executives of the Austrian team aren't going to be experiencing butterflies in their tummies when they see Alonso up there. One reason is due to Red Bull's staff being poached directly by Aston Martin. The team that now uses not only a very similar design to Red Bull, but also their former intellectual properties as well. One thing about Formula One is that everyone can go everywhere, and when money talks, everyone else needs to shut up and listen. Dan Fallows, for one, has listened well and has managed to bring his life into perfect harmony when it comes to progressing in Formula One. In Red Bull, he was the head of aerodynamics, and with the ingeniousness of Adrian Newey and Pierre Woucher, it was evident that this was the pinnacle of his career in the Austrian team. Aston Martin, for one, understood that and poached Fallows earlier in 2022. And while many think that this is too early for Fallows to bring any intellectual property to Aston Martin, due to the car upgrades coming later in the season, we need to remember one thing. Red Bull didn't actually have to wait for upgrades to be competitive. Verstappen and Perez were championship candidates as early as the first race of the season, and the design was very much in Fallows' head when he decided to take his talents to Aston Martin. This is something that Helmut Marko has hinted at and thrown some jabs at. And if you think that Fallows hasn't helped Aston Martin a lot with the design, just look at Barcelona 2022. This was the race where Aston Martin tried to bring a double-floor side pod design, the same as the one Red Bull was rocking at that time of the season, and the results of Stroll and Vettel were miserable, both out in Q3 on Saturday and no points on Sunday. Now, the car looks very similar to Red Bull, something that Helmut Marko has talked about, as the senior advisor of the Austrian team added, "If you compare the cars, the Aston Martin is most similar to our Red Bull. There's a reason for that. Not only did Fallows change, but also some other employees, and they obviously have a good memory." Reports say that Aston Martin were able to poach as many as 120 people from Red Bull from the lower ranks, with Fallows being the highest in the order that people left the Austrian team for the UK-based squad. If this is true, then rest assured that Aston Martin is definitely the team that can be the closest competitor for Red Bull, something that Verstappen and Perez are very happy to experience as a change in their boring dominance in the first race of the season. Perez has also taken a jab at Aston Martin, and when asked about how he feels about the 2023 Bahrain GP order, he said that it's very nice to have 3 Red Bulls up front. Can we be mad at Aston Martin? Most definitely not, because it's not the design they're stealing. It's the people who are actually doing it and engineering it in the first place. So one couldn't help but wonder why Red Bull didn't do more to keep people like Fallows in the team if they didn't want to complain about them being poached by their rivals. But there is only so much place for talents in one team, and Red Bull knew that they could not hold all of the intellectuals on the grid and expect them to be satisfied with the roles that they're assigned. On the other hand, they do believe that the legality of the AMR 23, which is the name of the 2023 Challenger from Aston Martin, is something that needs to undergo revisions. But why is Red Bull doing that now all of a sudden and not last year in Barcelona? Obviously, the threat from Aston Martin is much bigger now, and they have emerged as a team that's better in the long run compared to Ferrari and Mercedes. Not only that, but they have staff that used to work for Red Bull, so now it's evident that they can implement much more designs on the 2023 car compared to last year, where they were able to observe only on the outside of the car. This is why Helmut Marko is ready to take things to court if all hell breaks loose, and whether he would be in the right to do so, only time will tell. As of now, it's evident that Red Bull are in a league of their own, with Russell saying that he believes the RB19 will win every race of the season, and they won't be stopped at any given chance if the season doesn't take a massive, sudden twist. While Marko understands that the intellectual knowledge of Fallows is something he cannot hide just because he used to work for Red Bull, he asked a very interesting question to the media, as he went on to elaborate. It's true that what Fallows had in his head cannot be erased. Copying the focus is not prohibited, but can you copy in such detail without having documentation of our car? We had 3 Red Bulls on the podium, only the last one with a different engine. Red Bull is definitely angry about the recent developments, and one race isn't enough for us to conclude who is the championship favourite. Remember that last year both Red Bulls retired on the first race in Bahrain, and Verstappen went on to win the season in dominant fashion. While this is likely to be the outcome of the 2023 season, we're yet to see the full potential of the AMR 23. Of course, if it turns out to be a legal one. And this is something that is heavily expected by Aston Martin as well, with Dan Fallows speaking to the media after the first race this year. The former Red Bull aerodynamicist said that he has a lot of hope when it comes to the aggressive development process behind the car, saying that we are yet to see the full potential of the AMR 23. As he elaborated, it is definitely an evolution of last year's car, but a sort of aggressive evolution of it. There are reasonable limitations to these rules, but we were able to find some fairly substantial gains in a lot of areas, not only aerodynamic, but also mechanical as well, compared to the last car. Fallows believes that if a team develops a car around 2 different concepts, it's never going to reach its full potential, and being able to design a car from scratch by following one individual concept was a huge benefit for the team. Furthermore, Fallows continued to talk about what made the team even better compared to 2022. He added, "Also, there was a lot of momentum from last year because we made quite a significant amount of progress in the second half of the season, so it has been carrying that on. Where we are now, I don't know, but I think we've seen that it's definitely a big step from where we were last year, and that's the main thing we were aiming for, really." Fallows will likely meet Red Bull's anger down the road, and if there is one thing that we learned about Red Bull in the past, it's that they're not willing to let go of things that are compromising their identity as a team. Formula One is all about innovation, so seeing similar cars fighting at the front couldn't help but remind us of the 2020 season, where Racing Point, now known as Aston Martin, has been labelled as the pink Mercedes due to them stealing the entire concept of the Constructors' Championships back then. What do you think about Aston Martin's progress and Red Bull's cheating allegations? Let us know in the comments below.